shut it, forget it.
There is a motorcycle that sells 10,000 units every single day. That is not a typo. 10,000 every day. 300,000 every month. It starts at $800, gets 165 miles per gallon, and it has outsold Harley-Davidson's entire 122-year production run, and you cannot buy one in America at any price. The numbers that do not make sense. This is the Hero Splendor, and if you have never heard of it, you are not alone. Most Americans haven't, but that says a great deal more about us than it does about this bike. Here is some perspective. Since 1994, Hero MotoCorp has sold over 30 million of these things. That is just the Splendor. The company itself has moved 125 million motorcycles total. Harley-Davidson, the most American motorcycle brand on the planet, has built somewhere between 8 and 10 million motorcycles across its entire history, from 1903 to today. Hero does that number in 18 months. Indian Motorcycle moves around 37,000 units a year. That is what Hero sells in a week and a half. Do the math. 300,000 Splendors per month, 10,000 per day, which means every 8 seconds, somewhere on this planet, someone is buying a Hero Splendor. And yet, walk into any dealership in America and ask for one. They will look at you like you are speaking a completely different language. Google it without adding India to the search, and you will barely find anything. This bike exists in what feels like a parallel dimension. So what exactly is going on here? How does the world's most successful motorcycle remain completely invisible to American riders? That is what we are here to figure out. Let's talk about what $800 to $900 gets you in Mumbai. The base model, the one that has been selling relentlessly since 1994, starts around $800. Depending on the state, dealer incentives, and the features you want, you are looking at $800 to $950 maximum. A 97.2 cubic centimeter engine. Yes, that is small, tiny by American standards, but it puts out 8 horsepower, which does not sound like much until you realize the entire bike weighs 247 pounds. Here is what makes this thing nearly indestructible. It uses a horizontal sloper design, a direct descendant of the Honda Cub motor. Some of you rode Honda Trail 90S or CT110S back in the day. Same DNA, same brilliantly simple engineering. Because the cylinder lays nearly flat, oil splashes naturally onto the piston as it moves. No complicated high-pressure pumps needed, no radiator needed. It cools itself in the wind and lubricates itself by moving. Mechanical simplicity that has been refined over 60 years. For comparison, a Harley Street 750 weighs around 500 pounds, double. The Splendor holds 2.6 gallons of fuel, which does not sound like much either, except it travels 165 miles on every single gallon. Real-world numbers, not some laboratory test fantasy. That is a 400 to 500 mile range on a tank that costs roughly $9 to fill. When is the last time you filled your bike for less than $10? Put it this way, that Ford F-150 sitting in your driveway burns more fuel idling at a stoplight than this bike burns riding to the next town. Now, there is no point pretending otherwise. This is not a pretty motorcycle by American standards. No chrome, no elaborate paint, no leather saddlebags, no attitude. It has a rectangular headlight that looks like it came off a 1970s Datsun, a flat bench seat, and basic alloy wheels. It looks utilitarian because that is exactly what it is. That seat that looks too long to American eyes, it is designed for a family of 4. Dad driving, mom on the back, 2 kids in between. Because in India, motorcycles are not weekend toys. They are how you get your children to school, how you move your business inventory, how you bring produce to market, how you earn a living. There are bikes out there with 150,000 kilometers on the clock, 93,000 miles original engine, still running, still returning 60 kilometers per liter. Owners spending around $50 a year on maintenance. Not per visit, per year. What does 1 hour of labor cost at your local dealership? Probably more than that figure covers for an entire year. The divorce that built an empire. Here's where the story gets genuinely interesting. Because Hero did not always build motorcycles alone. Back in 1984, an Indian company called Hero Group partnered with Honda. It made sense. Hero had manufacturing scale and understood the Indian market. Honda had the technology and the engineering. They called it Hero Honda, and they ran an advertising campaign with a simple tagline, "Fill it, shut it, forget it." which basically meant the bike was so reliable you could just ride it and stop worrying. And it worked. By 2001, Hero Honda was the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer. The Splendor, running Honda's legendary engine design, became India's default motorcycle. But partnerships do not always last. By 2010, cracks were showing. The original agreement restricted Hero Honda to manufacturing only in India. Hero wanted to go global. Honda refused to share newer technology. And then Honda's own Indian subsidiary announced they were launching bikes that competed directly with Hero's bestsellers. On December 16, 2010, the partnership ended. Hero bought out Honda's stake for around $1.7 billion, renamed the company Hero MotoCorp, brought in BMW engineers, built their own research and development centers, and kept selling Splendors. Millions of them. But here is the part that matters for this story. After that split, Hero did attempt to enter the American market once. Sort of. In 2012, Hero partnered with Eric Buell Racing. If you remember, Eric Buell was the engineer behind those unconventional American sport bikes with fuel stored in the frame. Hero invested $25 million. The plan was to distribute Hero bikes across North America starting in 2014. April 15, 2015. Eric Buell Racing filed for receivership. $20 million in debt. Hero's $25 million? Gone. Liquidated for parts. And Hero never tried again. That was their one shot at America. It failed completely. So today, the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer does not have a single dealership in the United States. Not one. The wall America built. Even if Hero decided to try again tomorrow, there is a reason they almost certainly would not. And it is not about ambition, it is about math. The Environmental Protection Agency requires emissions certification before any motorcycle can be sold in America. Testing costs $20,000 to $50,000 per engine family before a single bike is built. Then there is the Department of Transportation. Federal motor vehicle safety standards covering brake hoses, lighting, tires, brake systems, controls, and displays. Each category requires separate certification. Add it all up. EPA testing. DOT compliance. Shipping from India $700 to $1,000 per bike. Ocean freight another $800 to $1,500. Import duties 2.4% to 4% base, plus potentially 25% Section 232 tariffs. That $870 Splendor, by the time it reaches an American showroom floor, needs to sell for at least $2,400 just to break even. At that price, it is competing against the Honda Navi at $2,000 and used Japanese bikes that buyers already know and trust. At $2,400, the Splendor's entire value proposition disappears. And the infrastructure problem is just as serious. In India, Hero operates over 10,000 service points. Parts are everywhere. Every mechanic knows these engines without consulting a manual. Breakdown, and someone nearby can fix it the same day. In America, there would be zero dealer network, no parts availability, and no mechanics who have ever seen one of these engines before. And honestly, putting an 8-horsepower motorcycle with a 60 miles per hour's top speed onto a Texas freeway where traffic moves at 85 is a real problem. That is not a dismissal, that is just physics. But here is the question that sits underneath all of this. Why have we decided a vehicle is only legitimate if it can sustain 85 miles per hour when 60% of American trips are under 6 miles from home? The regulatory system makes it effectively impossible. You can call that consumer protection. You can call it ensuring unsafe vehicles stay off American roads. Or you can look at over 1 billion people riding these machines daily, keeping them running for years on almost nothing, and ask exactly what we think we are protecting ourselves from. The world Americans do not see. Let me describe something most Americans will never see in person. This is what transportation looks like for most of the world. Not SUVs, not pickup trucks, not even cars. Motorcycles. Specifically, motorcycles like the Splendor. Americans look at this and think dangerous. And maybe some of it is. But for hundreds of millions of people, this is not recreation. This is survival. Picture a village in Uttar Pradesh. No public transit. Nearest town is 30 kilometers away. 35 years ago, most people there never left. They were born, lived, and died within a few miles of home. Then this motorcycle showed up, $870, 65 cents per mile to run. Suddenly, that town is 40 minutes away instead of unreachable. Job opportunities, education, healthcare. A man runs a small shop, rides his Splendor 12 kilometers every morning to buy supplies, carries them back 6 days a week, 15 years on the same bike. That is not a commuter story. That is a business that exists because of one motorcycle. A 24-year-old woman in Bangalore learned to ride on her father's Splendor and now commutes 40 kilometers each way to her job in the city. Her mother never left their village. Her grandmother never visited the next town. One generation, one motorcycle, a completely different life. And then there is this. 2 riders took a pair of Splendors to Ladakh, the Himalayas, 3,100 kilometers, 14 days, some of the highest and most dangerous mountain roads on Earth. They reached Kardung La, 17,500 feet above sea level, on 97cc motorcycles designed for city commuting. Total trip cost $360. Meanwhile, American adventure riders are spending $25,000 on a BMW GS and another $5,000 in gear to do the same routes. The Splendor also powers an entire gig economy. India's bike taxi platforms run substantially on bikes like this one, with projections showing that market growing toward $1.5 billion by 2030. We are not talking about a hobby. We are talking about a full economy built on a 247-pound motorcycle that the American market has never encountered. The question nobody asks. So let us talk about what this actually means, because this is not really just a story about motorcycles. 6% of American adults do not have reliable transportation. That figure climbs to 16% for people below the poverty line. 18% of American households own no vehicle at all. If you are in the poorest 10% of American households, vehicle costs consume 22.6% of your income. Not housing, not food. Transportation. The average used car in America now costs over $28,000. A cheap new car starts at $35,000 minimum. Or you buy a questionable imported bike off an online marketplace for $1,500 and hope the engine survives past 5,000 miles. This bike costs $800 to $900, gets 165 miles per gallon, lasts 150,000 miles on basic maintenance, and it cannot legally be sold here. We tell ourselves we are protecting consumers, ensuring safety, maintaining standards, and maybe that is true. Or maybe we have regulated away the possibility of genuinely affordable transportation. Maybe we have quietly decided that mobility is a luxury, that if you cannot afford a real vehicle by American definitions, you simply do not participate. The answer to that is not straightforward, and nobody has a clean one. This is not an argument for dropping all safety standards and letting anything onto American roads. But when one motorcycle has sold more units than some entire countries have registered vehicles, when it has given hundreds of millions of people access to work, education, and healthcare they never had before, when it costs less than a single month of insurance, in California, it is at least worth asking the question. Every 8 seconds, someone somewhere on this planet solves their transportation problem for $800 to $900. And every 8 seconds, thousands of Americans are trying to figure out how they are getting to work tomorrow. The question was never really why this bike is not sold here. The question is when affordability stopped being a design goal at all. The Hero Splendor exists. You just cannot buy one, and that says everything. Now, tell me what you think of the $800 motorcycle in the comments. And if this impressed you, tap the video popping up on your screen right now. We break down the 9 proven secrets that make motorcycle engines last forever. Trust me, this is something every rider should know.